Hello, this is Pastor Rick, and I want to welcome you to this special edition of the Sunday Forum for Easter, actually for Holy Week. And first, I want to invite you to the Sunday Forum on Sunday between services, where we will share some of our Eastern traditions. How does your family celebrate Easter? And we'll hear how other families celebrate as well. But this video is a very special one. During Holy Week, one of the great pieces of Western music is sung in many Lutheran churches and now in churches all across the world, St. Matthew's Passion by Bach. It prepared people for this week by singing the whole Passion narrative. This is a 30-piece introduction into that wonderful musical telling of the story. I want to challenge you to watch the whole video. I can promise you, you will be blessed as you listen to the explanation of St. Matthew's Passion. Enjoy.
My name is James Gilchrist, and I'd like to welcome you to this musical tour through Bach's St. Matthew Passion. The St. Matthew Passion is a big piece in a great many ways. It's quite long, of course, and uses lots of players, but it takes us on a huge emotional journey and has become one of the most important works in the whole of the history of Western music. But in essence, it's very simple. In the Lutheran Church, in the church service shortly before Easter, there had grown up a tradition of intoning the biblical reading of the Passion of Christ. That's to say, his trial and execution. And perhaps it's no surprise that over the years this tradition allowed the performance to become more embellished. Different people would sing the roles of the different characters, Jesus, the narrator, Pilate, and so on. Instrumentalists were brought in to provide harmonic support for the complicated vocal lines. And arias were added, non-biblical text, that allow the audience and the performers a moment to reflect upon the unfolding story. At the heart of the work are the chorales, the Lutheran sung hymns that were so well known to the 18th century members of the congregation in Bach's church, and indeed are still quite well known today. And indeed, the first movement, despite its size, is in essence an embellished chorale melody. Two orchestras and two choirs invite us to join in the remembrance of the telling of this story. But the music reaches its climax when the Ripieno choir comes in with the chorale melody over the top of it all. O Lamm Gottes, unschuldig, O guiltless Lamb of God. And then we're straight into the story, which seems to begin almost mid-sentence.
Da Jesus diese Rede vollendet hatte, sprach zu seinen Jüngern.
The first action sets up two themes. First, Jesus is preparing himself and his disciples for his death. And second, the Pharisees are plotting to arrest and kill Jesus. Notice how the story is told quite straightforwardly, with accompaniment of only cello and organ, played here by Thomas Pitt and Christopher Bucknell, and the singer declaiming the story in more or less speech rhythm. And see how Bach uses his two choirs and two orchestras to depict the argumentative Pharisees.
Da versammelten sich die hohen Priester und Schriftgelehrten und die Ältesten im Volk in den Palast des hohen Priesters, der da ist Kaiphas, und hielten Rat, wie sie Jesu mit Listen griffen und töteten. Sie sprachen aber: Ja, nicht auf das Fest, 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 auf das Fest,
The chorus is used in this way as part of the drama, but they can play various roles. The Pharisees, as we've just heard, but also the disciples, the Romans, Pilate even, or the crowd baying for blood. The story moves to the Last Supper, where Jesus picks out Judas as his betrayer, and where he encourages the disciples to remember him and what his death signifies every time they eat together. This beautiful music for Jesus instituting the Eucharist shows us how Bach uses all the strings of Orchestra 1 to provide a halo of sound around Jesus every time he speaks.
Da sie aber aßen, nahm Jesus das Brot, dankete und brach's und gab's den Jüngern und sprach: Nehmet, esset, das ist mein Leib. Und nahm den Kelch.
The action moves to the Mount of Olives and the Garden of Gethsemane. We see Peter, the role is played here by William Crane, vowing that he will stand by Jesus no matter what happens, and Jesus warning him of his inability to keep his word. And we see here how Bach uses the chorales as comments on the action. We are perhaps asking ourselves whether we would have done any better than Peter. The text of the chorale says that we wish to stand by Jesus throughout his agony.
Petrus sprach zu ihm: Und wenn ich mit dir sterben müsste, so will ich dich nicht verleugnen. Desgleichen sagten auch alle Jünger.
All too soon, the prayerful mood is interrupted by the arrival of Judas and an armed crowd of soldiers from the high priests and elders. Jesus is identified by Judas, and the soldiers arrest him. At this moment of high dramatic tension, Bach introduces one of the few duets in this work. Soprano and alto soloists, here Sophie Bevan and David Alsop, shadowed by flute and oboe, weave long, sinuous lines, perhaps suggestive of the snake of betrayal or the coils of rope, over a constantly moving line of upper strings. The true bass of the orchestra is silent, making us feel strangely at sea. The chorus's futile attempts to stop what is going on erupt into rage and astonishment at the absence of a God-inspired reaction to this outrage. Thunder, earthquake, where are you? Peter flails with his sword, but Jesus takes command. This has to happen. The disciples flee. And that is the end of the first part of Bach's St. Matthew Passion. Jesus has been arrested and taken to the high priest, and his disciples have fled. And we, the congregation, reflect upon our part in humanity's guilt in allowing this to happen, that our innate sinfulness has necessitated Jesus' suffering. We reflect, of course, in a chorale. O Mensch, bewein dein Sünde groß. O mankind, weep for your great sin. We begin the second part with Jesus being interrogated by the high priest. False witnesses are sought. When Jesus speaks of the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of God, the Pharisees become incensed and immediately resort to violence. Hear what Bach does at this point. He manages to have the words of Jesus, sung here by Matthew Rose, maintain nobility beside the demonic rabble of the Pharisees.
Und der Hohepriester antwortete und sprach zu ihm: Ich beschwöre dich bei dem lebendigen Gott, dass du uns sagest, ob du seiest Christus, der Sohn Gottes. Jesus sprach zu ihm: Du sagest's, doch sage ich euch, von nun an wird's geschehen, dass ihr sehen werdet des Menschensohn, sitzen zur Rechten der Kraft und kommen in den Wolken des Himmels. Da zerriss der Hohepriester seine Kleider und sprach: Er hat Gott gelästert, was dürfen wir weiter Zeugnis? Siehe, jetzt habt ihr seine Gotteslästerung gehört, was denket euch? Sie antworteten und sprachen:
And hear how the violence against Christ is immediately followed by the chorale, Wer hat dich so geschlagen? Who is it that has struck you thus? The attention focuses on Peter. He had promised to stand by Jesus, and we witness his failure to do so, exactly as Jesus had predicted. And Peter is overwhelmed by his uselessness and guilt. There follows one of the most famous and beautiful arias in the whole of this work. Erbarme dich, have mercy, Lord. The sobbing motifs of the voice and the violin over sustained chords in the upper strings and pizzicato bass allow this pleading for mercy to be perfectly painted. The violin is played here by Bojan Cicic, who is the leader of the Academy of Ancient Music. Judas, full of remorse at his actions, throws down the 30 pieces of silver at the high priest's feet. Bach expresses this impotent remorse in another stunning aria for violin obbligato, in other words, with the violin taking a duetting role with the voice. The aria is sung by William Gaunt and the violin played by Rodolfo Richter. The flying notes of the violin are perhaps the flashes of silver as the coins tumble onto the ground.
Gib mir meinen Jesu wieder, gib mir meinen Jesu wieder. Seht, das Geld den Marterlohn, wirft euch der verlorene Sohn zu den Füßen nieder. Seht das Geld, den Marterlohn. Seht das Geld, den Marterlohn, wirft euch der verlorene Sohn zu den Füßen nieder.
Jesus is brought before the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. Barabbas is released. Pilate washes his hands of the whole affair, and the crowd bays for blood in an ever-increasing frenzy. Amidst all this high tension, Bach follows Pilate's question, "What evil has Jesus done?" with an accompanied soprano recitative listing all Jesus' good works. And there follows a beautiful soprano aria with flute obbligato, played here by Rachel Beckett, where the flute delineates gloriously supple lines over staccato crotchets given by Oberdecacia, while the bass line of the orchestra is silent. The cello and the organ and the double bass have ceased to play. And the effect of this is to lift us out of the drama. It feels momentarily as if time has stopped. The reality of violence, mockery, and persecution return with force. Jesus is humiliated with a crown of thorns and a purple robe, and he's led away to be crucified. Simon of Cyrene is called upon to carry the cross. The aria here, Komm, süßes Kreuz, has the singer wishing himself to be the bearer of this cross. And Bach uses what even in his day would have been a slightly old-fashioned instrument, a viola da gamba, played here by Reiko Ichise. And the dotted rhythms in the gamba part, spanning the whole range of the instrument from top to bottom, allow us to share in the weight of the cross and the struggle to carry it.
Süßes Kreuz, so will ich sagen, mein Jesu, gib es immer her. Komm, süßes Kreuz, so will ich sagen, mein Jesu, gib es immer her.
We arrive at Golgotha, and Jesus is crucified. His clothes are divided among the people, and he is further mocked. His last words, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me, are set by Bach without the halo of strings that have surrounded all his previous utterances in this piece. Jesus' abandonment is painted in music.
Und die 9. Stunde schrie Jesus laut und sprach: Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. Das ist mein Gott, warum hast du mich verlassen?
Soon after this, Jesus dies. The chorale that follows begs that Jesus should be with us at the moment of our own death. It is the Passion chorale that we have heard so many times during the course of this work. The story is done. There remains only the burial. Jesus' suffering is at an end. The music, following Pilate's last utterance, truly this was the Son of God, moves into the key of E-flat major, and there's a sense of completion, of calm, of release. The key of E-flat, of course, has 3 flats in the key signature, and perhaps this is significant at the moment of the appearance of the Trinity. The warm colour is carried through into the last aria of the piece, Mache dich, mein Herze, rein. We wish our hands to assist those of Joseph of Arimathea as he buries the body of Jesus. And the text seems to look forward to the eternity that waits Christ and us. Welt, geh aus. World, depart.
Lass Jesum ein, Welt, geh aus, lass Jesum ein. Mache dich, mein Herz, rein.
Jesus' body is laid to rest. Bach's St. Matthew Passion ends with the chorus, and indeed all of us, weeping beside the tomb. Christ's agonies are over.